Rogers?
I
Do
have
we have quorum?
That's what I was just wondering.
What is a quorum? Yes.
We got
We
1,
got plenty.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We
5.
are live now.
Okay,
We
I will
would,
call
we
the
would
meeting
have
to
a
order.
quorum, I think.
Okay, adoption of the agenda, agenda for May 13th. Has anyone got any?
I shall move that we adopt it.
Well, may I speak? Could I
Wilma?
add an item to the agenda?
Okay, what was it you wanted to add?
I want to discuss the purpose of this group. I think it's essential after what we've been through.
Richard, I'm not sure how that works, if we can bring that to this agenda or if it would have to go on the next one for June.
We can maybe have a preliminary discussion under other business, and then if we're going to have a fulsome discussion, we can put it on the June agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so adoption of the minutes of February 11th. The minutes of the Community Development Advisory Committee meeting held February 11th, 2021 be adopted.
Madam Chair, did you call the vote on the agenda as amended?
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, can we have a vote on the mover and a seconder for the agenda and the
I move.
I'll second.
adjustment? Okay, that's done. Now the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read them? Any deletions or anything?
Just Madam Chair, we're going to call the vote on the agenda.
Okay. Oh, yes. I'm really ahead of myself. Okay, and anybody opposed? Okay, now we can move on to the minutes. So
Sorry
do
to
I have a
interrupt, Betty.
mover?
You just have to ask the question about the disclosure of pecuniary interests as well.
Okay. Okay, it's an off morning. Any pecuniary interest? Seeing none.
Noted in the minutes.
Mover and seconder for the minutes.
Could I move an amendment, just a small one?
Okay,
I had to leave to go over to the doctor's briefly, and I'm shown as coming back into the, I'm shown as leaving. I'm not sure I'm shown as re-entering, that they're both accounted for. I think they didn't show me as leaving. It just said I entered the meeting, but I had been there in the early part of the meeting and just left temporarily. That's all.
We do have you in there, Wilma. Exited the meeting at 10:12, entered the meeting at 10:37.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thanks.
okay.
Re-entered. Yeah, re-entered.
Re-entered would help,
Okay.
yeah.
So I had a mover and a seconder. Is anybody opposed? Okay. Now, Mr. Alex Jansen and of the Kingston Film Office and Mr. Jay Jolie will address our committee regarding potential to develop film and television opportunities in the region.
I'd like to be able to say I could give them a long introduction, but I have an interruption myself. So I'll let Alex and Jay speak to both of their projects. Alex is going to provide a bit of an overview of what the Kingston Film Office has been doing. And then Jay's going to speak about an initiative that he's undertaken since he's come to the region. So Alex, take it away.
Great.
And provide a little bit of background about yourselves as well. Sorry, I can't do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there is a presentation. I don't know if the slides are able to pull up. I could probably share a screen off mine if need be.
Alex, that's up to you. If you want to do it, it's easier that way so that you can move forward at your own pace, or I can share them for you.
Okay. The only thing is I know Jay's got slides as well, so it might be easier to go off your presentation just because then
They're two separate presentations, so whatever works.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, cool. I'll do a quick share screen then on mine. Okay, so I think hopefully everyone can see. So yeah, I'm Alex Jansen. I lead the Kingston Film Office. I'm excited to be back in Kingston for the last 4 years. I've been really kind of back into it. But I came from the area originally with a student at Queen's in the film and media program, and used to run the screening room movie theater, and then kind of made my way into the industry by starting the Kingston Film Festival, I guess 21 years ago. And always been looking at ways to kind of to get back into the area. So I've been teaching in the Queen's Film and Media Department the last 10 years, and then had the opportunity to finally get a film office going, which is something we tried doing, I guess, 15 plus years ago in through the film festival. And so it's been really excited that it's happening now. The film office launched in Kingston originally as just a part-time consultation that I was doing while running a little production company out of Toronto. And then through the initial study, we kind of looked at how we could streamline kind of two things. We do everything from where you cast, crew, cater, streamlining permits, the whole process, opening up different locations which had been difficult to get access to. So working on getting Springer Market Square and City Hall more accessible. We did a big trial where we opened up the Kingston Penitentiary, which worked out really well. 6 month trial before COVID hit, but we were in that period of time able to bring in Titans from Netflix and Murdoch Mysteries and Star Trek Discovery, and then that's where we were able to really make the case for the economic potential of the sector. So to give context, the Titans shoot that came in through Netflix, that was over $250,000 directly into the community. That included $120,000 in hotel rooms, but everything from like lifts, 200 background extras, portable washrooms, site repairs to the facility that got sections of the penitentiary that had been mothballed for years back up and running, window replacements, the whole works. So it was a really great success story, and the city of Kingston has gotten behind film as one of the in the creative industries as one of their priority sectors for the first time. So we're really excited about that. Wanted to kind of give a bit of an overview of what we've been doing. So of the two streams that we do, one is very much about attracting and supporting production that comes in. The other side is really developing the local community and able to get the local community to be working on these productions and supporting these productions. So again, started in 2018. I'm going to kind of jump ahead. We did that trial in 2019 with the penitentiary, and then in 2020 we launched a few new initiatives. So what we'd started by doing within the community was we were doing information sessions and then workshops with all the major unions. And then we actually turned that into a trial practicum program. So this was a program we did with Queen's Film and Media, where 20 students were credited and insured to work on production. It worked out really well where they got all this advanced training, but then they all worked on Murdoch, they all worked on Star Trek. And then we've now run a second year of it. And they all just last week were working on an Amazon production. They're going to be working on this upcoming Paramount. And the whole idea was to take that program and open it up wider. So COVID's slowed things down, but I'll kind of talk about how we're now kind of resurrecting that. We've also brought this new opportunity to the community called the Telefilm Talent to Watch opportunity. So again, a lot of what was happening within the Kingston community on a production level was either hobby filmmaking or more like corporate video. What we've been able to try to do is connect a lot of those productions into telling their larger stories with more financing or getting them working on productions. So the Telefilm Talent to Watch opportunity, we've bridged both the Queen's Film and Media and the Kingston Canadian Film Festival onto it, but it's a national competition for $150,000 to make a first feature. So I'm going to kind of circle back to that on a production we have coming into the Frontenac region. We've also been able to bridge something called the Bell 5 TV1 project, and they're doing $30,000 to $60,000 licenses for video on demand content and so streaming content. We've been able to bridge 6 local companies to contracts onto it so far. We also did an initiative with Kingston, the Kingston Music Video Initiative, where what we did is we supported 12 of these local production companies on creation of music videos, where 100 bands pitched the dozen plus production companies, and then 200 members of the community were involved in these productions. It was great for getting a lot of production happening in the area, but it was also a way to identify who these companies are, how they're operating, and how we can kind of help them run to a higher standard. So everything with helping them on getting their insurance, getting them permits properly, operating with call sheets. And then out of that, we've been able to identify some of the top companies and then feed them forward into industry. So some of the local production companies have now been doing second camera on a Channel 4 UK series or a CBC documentary that comes in. So we're able to start to kind of build that up. We get hit, of course, with the COVID-19 shutdown. So we went into a full break, and then we returned part-time in August. And then we've seen our sector really start to rebound. So fall 2020 was actually an all-time record for the province for production. Because of course, while we're all shut down, everyone's been watching streaming content. So the biggest thing was figuring out how to safely proceed with production. So the province came up with something called the Section 21 guidelines, but they go above the standard COVID safety measures, where we're looking at everything from testing up to 3 times a week, N95 masks, additional visors. As people get closer to talent, you've got different zones, so you can't really move between them. And it's really been working. As of January, there'd been 148,000 tests within the province for the industry, and only 105 cases. And the most recent stat is it's a 0.06% instance rate. So it's very expensive. It means a lot of production under a budget threshold can't really operate, but it's meant that the big studio stuff can happen. So the first things we had return was CBC's Nature of Things. It was a really great production. It was kind of our test working with KFLNA Public Health. That was one where they were able to hire entirely locally. Their support crew went really well. And then the next one that kind of came back was Lock and Key. We brought that show in from Netflix, season 2. They came in and it just started to show that economic potential and how it can help our sector, because the film office falls under tourism, and that's been the hardest hit. So Lock and Key was over $150,000 in direct economic impact, more than 600 hotel rooms, all operating under those really strict measures. So everything was very safe. And then we bridged that production to those training programs for the community. So we had a ton of community involved as background extras or locations PAs. And actually the production manager on it was so impressed, they made a $10,000 donation to the training programs at Queen's. So 2020 was a rough year, but we still managed to have 48 productions in total. And then that leads into where we are with 2021. So we returned to full-time operation in February. We've already had an Amazon series that came through. That'll be, I think it's going to net out at about 150,000 as well. But we've also locked a Paramount series. It's going to be coming in start of June, but it's going to be doing 3 blocks in Kingston throughout the summer. And we think that one's probably going to be over $1 million spend in direct economic impact to the area. We've been able to, because the city's named the industry and recognized how it's been building, they've named it as that creative industries as a priority sector, as mentioned. It also means that they've allowed us to increase the incentive pool that we have. So it used to be that we could help a production with 50% of travel and accommodation up to a $10,000 cap. We've now been able to get the preliminary approval to access up to $250,000 of the destination fund. And then the way we're starting to use that is to not just get these productions that come, shoot, and leave, but to get productions that would shoot entirely in the area. So we're starting to target stuff like the Hallmark Christmas movies, some of the genre stuff. Jay's going to talk about some of the stuff he's doing, which is perfectly suited, because instead of it being like what was happening at a hobby level or at a corporate video level, or what was coming in at a massive multi-million-dollar budget that would come, shoot, and leave, it's now starting to target these $500,000 to $1.5 million productions that will build a crew within the community. So the cities come in with that. We've already got a first production through that program looking at August. And then we've also been lobbying for this larger pool of money for the entire region called the Southeastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund. And it's modeled after what's been incredibly successful in Northern Ontario. It's built an entire industry there, but where they can get an additional $500,000 of funding towards their projects based on their spend into that region. So we've been modeling after it. Jay's part of the group onto there. We've got a group that basically goes from Prince Edward County kind of across, but the whole encapsulation would basically be from Port Hope across to Nepean. And we think that this could completely transform the entire area. So if that were to come across, it'd be a $25 million pool. It has 12 MPPs in support, and it's also got Minister McLeod's office very, very strong support of it. So we're hoping that might go through, which will lead into massive amounts of production into the area. And then the other big initiatives we're doing is this expanded regional support. So what we found is that a production will come to Kingston largely for City Hall or Springer Market Square or for the Kingston Penitentiary, but then we try to upsell them on staying longer and spending more money and shooting within the region. So as that's been happening, we've been servicing more production into the area. We had one into the Frontenac region where that was actually Richard and I's first interaction, and then with Allison, where we did like kind of a day scout, where we had Alana from our office. We shot some locations that we knew that the province was looking for, things like closed schools and whatnot. So we shot the Hinchinbrook Public School. We got it into the Provincial Locations Library, and then this is a great case where, you know, a production found it on the library. They chose to shoot at it. I think they paid $1,000 a day, and they came in and they shot a CBC documentary in there earlier this year. Verona, which I'm going to talk about at length, it's through that Telefilm Talent to Watch program. So it's a feature film shot entirely in Verona, scheduled for June. And that's through that $150,000 first time feature program. That's completely coming into the area. We've got this RTO9 study. We're going to be kicking it off next Thursday, but we were originally hoping to do it last year, and then COVID slowed things down. But RTO9 came in with some funding towards what we're looking at doing is within the broader RTO9 membership. So from Belleville to Brockville, Prince Edward County, Lennox and Addington, we're basically going to be looking at how we can start to share our practices within the surrounding communities, how we can identify top locations within those communities and get them photographed, inventoried, and put into the locations library to get more of these cases like the Hinchinbrook Public School. So trying to get at least the top 5 locations from each of the DMOs into it. And then ideally kind of coming out of that, we'll have a bit of a framework for how we could potentially expand the reach and do more to support the areas. So kind of in the center of that will be the case study of this feature film, Verona. And then the separate study that I'm not going to kind of step into, Jay will talk a lot about, is we've been supporting Jay on the hyper-local film strategy, which I think is an incredible initiative towards, again, building more of a native industry within our regions. Otherwise, things we've been working on is the increased locations. So Kingston Penitentiary, based on that 6-month trial, it worked really well. We're now the point person for Correction Services Canada on bringing productions in. So we're kind of negotiating that stuff like the Paramount, where we kind of represent their interests, make sure everything goes really smoothly. We've been working with the city on the possibility of opening up Rockwood Asylum. We've been working with the Dorna camps on increasing access to prison for women. And then we're also working on these surrounding regions. And so a big part of that is when I mentioned the RTO9 study, it'll be looking at how we can help the infrastructure for the surrounding regions and consult with them. But also we're going to engage with the money from RTO9. We're going to engage a photographer, and we've got 2 summer work students to go out there and shoot those top locations. So we'll have at least 20 days of photography within the surrounding regions. And that's something we really want to make sure that everyone's represented much stronger in. And then otherwise, we've been redesigning and expanding our workshops and training. So we do have a proposal into Skills Development Ontario to take the framework of that practicum training program we've piloted with Queens and to expand it out so that we'd have 3 local high schools, Regi, Holy Cross, LCVI, also Leahurst, and then we've got St. Lawrence College, Queens Film and Media, and potentially March of Dimes, as well as Correction Services Canada, into this training program to start to build more employment and to be basically building that local crew base and that local industry. So with that, the 2 things I kind of wanted to touch on in more detail is Verona. So this is the feature film. You'll be hearing a lot more as it kind of gets closer. So it's again through that Telefilm Talent to Watch program. So it's for a first-time feature filmmaker. In this case, it's Sebastian Bach, who's a Frontenac native. He's a director. It's his first feature. The project went through Ryerson, so they're a partner on this program. And they were greenlit 2 years ago. Everything was held up with COVID, so they would have shot last summer. And now they're looking at a June 1 to 18 shoot. This will be that kind of regional case study. We're doing everything we can to support it. What we're doing to make sure it goes smooth and for everybody and safely, we're actually coming in with a $10,000 contribution. So we're actually going to be incentivizing them to hire a location person locally who can then start to train up and learn how to do how to actually represent the locations within the region and help scout within the region. We've been able to bridge to that practicum program I mentioned. So there's 20 students that will be credited and insured to work on the production. Additional internships. Our summer work students will be working on it as well. We're helping on the municipal relations. We've been dealing with Richard and Allison, also dealing with Tim and Amanda on trying to help bridge some of those things, and also help with our best practices for how things like permits would work, help with closures, make sure that the proper insurance is in place, and just that everything goes really smoothly. We've also been able to bridge them to a COVID safety program. We're hoping it's going to be through the Chambers program, which is then testing twice weekly. Otherwise, part of our contribution is going to go towards the cost of bringing in separate nurses to administer the rapid testing for it. And we've actually been able to bridge them as well to accommodations with Queens in the residences. So they'll take over an entire floor to operate safely. So safety is paramount, making sure that it's a great experience for the locations, and kind of using this as a great test run for as we start to ideally bring in more productions into the surrounding regions. So I think it's going to be a really exciting one. And then, yeah, I mentioned already about the residents and the placement. So that's kind of the Verona feature. And then kind of going into the RTO9 study I mentioned into a little bit more depth. So things are kicking off a little bit later than originally expected due to COVID, of course. But the plan has been it'll more likely now be June to September. The first part will be meeting all the regional contacts, doing an extensive survey, identifying their current processes, identifying their top locations and what their current resources are for cast, for crew, photographing those anchor locations and getting them into the Ontario provincial database, and then also photographing supporting locations. And this will be more so doing the work study. So we find the anchor locations, people will come in for Kingston Penitentiary, Rockwood Asylum, Brockville Railway Tunnel, but a lot of once you get a production in, the stuff that they're looking at is like, could be schools, diners, motels. There's a lot of secondary locations. So we'll make sure that that stuff's kind of starting to get inventoried. And then have that case, we'll support those case study productions that kind of come up through it. So we've already got Verona. This August one also could very well be within the Frontenac region. And then pending how that goes, we'll kind of coming out of that, we'll regroup and we'll look at a potential part 2. And the part 2 would be ideally to form a working group with membership from all these areas, ideally with Frontenac, with Prince Edward County, Quinte, and then just start to see how we can actually take the study and now act on it further, streamlining those processes, ideally teaming up on marketing, trade type marketing, starting to bring in FAM type tours where we bring in top location scouts and sell them onto the area, and have a stronger lobby for that Southeastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund, which we think has a good chance of going ahead, but who knows? So we're kind of pushing on it, but it's got the 12 MPPs in support. But our hope is kind of coming out of this, we'll have at least, another 20 letters, additional academic partners, and really lobby it and kind of position ourselves as being the Southeastern Ontario region, kind of especially Kingston Frontenac. And then ideally expanding the training programs from within that kind of the Kingston area into the larger catchment. So that's kind of an overview of both. And I think it probably makes sense to just go straight into Jay and then questions, unless anyone had any immediate stuff. Okay, well, I think Jay, so you probably want to take over on the share screen then.
Yep. Allison, did you want to, just because I'm calling in from my phone here from the island, do you, is it possible you could put up my slide deck?
Alex, I think oh, there we go. Do you have it there, Bree?
Yes, I'll put it up. Give me one moment here.
Not a problem. Thanks.
Jay,
Hello?
Are you complaining we don't have good broadband on the islands?
No, it's just with my partner, my girlfriend downstairs. She, I actually have very good Wi-Fi, but it's just my computer. I broke the camera, so I have to use my phone so I can actually see you. So I have to fix the camera on my screen on my desktop. So not a complaint at all. Actually, the SpeedFi works very well because I can see Princess Towers. So I've got wireless, which is actually quite speedy.
Warden Doyle, are you just a little sensitive?
Well, I'm at the east end of the island, so I don't get good coverage at all. I might drop out from time to time here.
Yeah, no, I got lucky that I'm on the just on the edge of Marysville. So as long as I can see the Princess Tower, we can get pretty good Wi-Fi from here. I've never tried the other stuff though, so I could imagine that maybe it's not great everywhere.
All right, Jay, we've got your presentation up here. Can you see it on the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I guess I should start. And thanks for Alex and for just kind of giving that great overview. And thanks for giving me time today. I'll try and be speedy. Anyway, so my name's Jay Jolly. I've known Alex, funny story, when I went to Queens back in the 90s. I was one of those students that studied there. I did my first short film there, and it played the very first Kingston Film Festival. And then from there, I went and worked in film and television for right up until just recently. So over COVID, I had an opportunity to come back to the island to help some friends. You might know them, Chris and Tom. So I helped write their business plan for the Wolf Island Hotel to help get it financed. And then while I was here, I kind of, I fell in love with the island. I hadn't spent a lot of time here when I was going to school, and I managed to find a house and bought a house, and now a resident. I brought already one business here, which is my vinyl record brokerage business. And then the second business that I want to do is I'm very bullish on Frontenac County for being that next kind of screen-based creative cluster for film, television, and documentaries. Just from my experience working in the Vancouver industry, working in the Toronto industry, and also shooting in smaller towns like Saskatchewan, Moose Jaw, North Bay, and Sudbury. So I see a lot of potential. So I thought what I would do, just to kind of give everybody an idea of, a lot of people, when they think of film, they think of, well, it's a creative industry, it's artists and stuff, when in fact, it's a big manufacturing industry. It just happens that we manufacture content for screens that we all watch all day long. So all your Netflix, all your Crave, we're the factory workers that make all that kind of stuff. So if we want to go to the next slide, I just want to talk about how big the business is for a minute. And just specifically Ontario. So leading up to COVID, Ontario was growing at about 15% a year. So it's a $2.4 billion business. Now, it's a big number, but also realize in British Columbia, there it's a $4.1 billion business. And the interesting thing about the Ontario government is they're on record. They want to see this sector get to about $5 billion by 2025. And to do that, we're going to have to start building these clusters like Frontenac County. And what that means for a region like ours is, new entry-level jobs that are graduates instead of a young student like me 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Geez, it's been a while. The 90s has been a while. Moving to Toronto, we keep them here in the county. The unique thing when I returned here and seeing it through the eyes of a film producer was that this is like a Hollywood backlot. There's so many amazing locations. There's so much diverse kind of settings. Being uniquely positioned between Toronto, Montreal, and Ottawa means we can draw resources. And we also benefit from really, shall I say, competitive tax credits, especially the provincial. We actually get a bonus here. And when you couple that with some of the stuff what the EODF is doing, and also some job creation stuff, I think there's a real opportunity to grow an industry here quickly. And I'm going to talk about that hyperlocal, which is my second point, the creation of a hyperlocal content for global export. And what I mean by that is attracting producers like me and training up a crew locally here in the county to basically make, just like farming, you make it all here. The scripts come from here, the talent comes from here, and ultimately the content you make all comes from here. And how that plays out is when you look at even like a show, as you remember, Corner Gas, it was made very much a Saskatchewan production. That's still, to this day, there's Australian tourists that visit that little gas station. So not only is it great for jobs, but it actually is great for tourism. A lot of the tourism that goes to New Zealand is a result of Lord of the Rings, believe it or not. So the other thing that I want to get into outside of that is film doesn't just hire people to work on set. We actually hire lots of people, lots of support revenue. And that can include carpenters, that includes catering, that includes vehicle rentals, And the list goes on in terms of how it reverberates into the community and other businesses. And, you know, when you look at something like when they shoot up in Sudbury, and some of them, like often every dollar that's invested is actually returns almost $5 to $7 into the community. So again, it's a really great way to, you know, to just build another sector. And that leads to, over time, infrastructure construction, like studios, old building retrofits that are turned into things like post-production houses, VFX houses. And the other thing that this business has that is really great is, you know, it makes the hospitality industry not so seasonal based, because one of the things that this also has is these crews are rather, you know, they grow, and the talent that we bring in, and there's always, you know, hotels that we need. There's always, you know, restaurants, of course, retail, and all the per diems that go with people spending in the community. So for me, to seize this opportunity requires an action plan. And with a specific focus of training up local crews. So one of the great things, so I'm, you know, early on last year, after I was finished my project with the Wolf, I really looked at, you know, I went out to, you know, Frontenac CFTC. Well, I guess it's Frontenac Business Services now. I think there was a name change.
Yes, there was.
Pardon?
Yes, there was.
Yes. I went to Kingston Economic Development. I went to Kingston Film Office and Alex, and, you know, put together a little pot of money. And what I've been doing, along with writing what Alex was talking about, which is a big proposal to see if we can secure about $25 million in funding for the region through the Southeastern Ontario Production Accelerator Fund. What I want to build locally is an action plan for us to basically what we need to do to build 2 to 3 crews in the next 5 years. Because once you have crews, then we can start attracting business, especially domestic producers, you know, like myself, to do those kind of, you know, $750 to $2 million budget movies that ultimately will lead to the bigger productions. Because once we have a crew that lives here, pays taxes here, their kids go to school together, what you find is then you actually start to create some momentum, and that momentum leads to, like in Sudbury and in North, it's $100 million industry now, that sector. So my big thing, if we go to the next slide, this talks about what I'm looking to deliver with this action plan. You know, the core activities are going to be to design basically a production pipeline. So what I've been building is to figure out how I can build basically it's called a slate. So 10 pictures back to back that act as a platform to create new jobs, skills training, and also just a way to build those kind of, to get those support services really aligned with how film production, the cadence that we work at, and to also, you know, connect and find, which is the second point, identify existing local resources and services along with deficiencies. See what we're lacking here. That, you know, initially we may have to import it from somewhere like Toronto or in Ottawa, but eventually the hope is to have those resources here at hand. So one of the things that I'm doing is going around and being a big evangelist for this, and I will meet with anybody anytime to really talk about this and you know, and so you can really beat up some of these ideas. So meeting with municipal business, real estate, cultural stakeholders that all have, you know, we all have to kind of hold hands to make this work. So the other thing I've been doing is really gathering the economic data and best practicing from existing clusters like this, like really looking at, you know, what they did in Sudbury with the NOHFC to really build that up. And other, you know, smaller, you know, rural places more than 200 kilometers outside the Greater Toronto Hamilton area that right now accounts for about 95% of that business, you know, 99 to 95%. One of the part of this is to draft a model for investment into local production and infrastructure. You know, not only can we get a lot of obviously free money with tax credits and all this, but there is, you know, this is a business that makes money. And I think, you know, if to provide a compelling model that can see local funds invested in as equity, or could be grants, or could be anything, to really make this job action plan thrive. And that includes strategies to leverage tax credits, job grants, and rural funds to make this happen. And my goal, and what I'd like to do in combination with what I'm working on with Alex, which is the Southeastern Ontario Production Fund, and supporting him. And, Alex is a great evangelist for this as well. Like, when he's doing location scout and bringing foreign producers to town, like he has so much energy. He's not just showing him Kingston, he's showing him the whole county and where to shoot. And I believe that we can, in the next 10 years, capture, provided that Ontario hits that $5 billion in revenue, I believe that we can capture 1% of that in 10 years, which would be a $500 million business. And so that's kind of what I'm looking to do with this action plan. I'm drafting it right now. Like I said, I've got a little bit of funding. Alex has been kind enough to provide some research students from Queens to help me gather some data. And my hope is to have a draft for stakeholders like yourselves to read, hopefully by the end of summer. And at the end, I just put a little bit about the last slide is just about me that you can, I think you also got sent, but that I do have been building this, I've been living and breathing, being a producer of content. And, back in the day, I was a musician, toured with the Tragically Hip. I founded agencies and film studios, one in Vancouver. I've shot all over Canada. I produced lots of content. I've sat on the board of the Vancouver International Film Festival and the Canadian Film and TV Academy. Right now I'm supporting Ontario musicians with this. So I've got this volunteer group that we've raised about 100,000 through this program called 33.3 to give to all these musicians that have been heavily impacted by COVID. I'm partnered with Universal Music, Ontario Crates, and iHeartRadio on that. As I said, I really do roll up my sleeves for the local, like by helping Chris and Tom lately with the general. I'm a very proud Wolf Islander now, and really I love being here. And the last is that's Jay Jolly, and I think I've laid it out pretty good. And if you guys have any questions or curiosities, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, Dennis.
Yes, thanks very much, Jay and Alex, for the presentation. I'm just wondering, as a committee and as a county council, what can we do to support your efforts and to attract more of these productions to the rural areas outside the city of Kingston? I know we got a number of places. If you live here on Wolf Island, Jay, you'll know Big Sandy Bay is just like a Caribbean beach, but there's lots of other spectacular places across the county that would be good venues to have a production.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Alex. You want to talk about, because you're Alex. So Alex is bringing the outside productions, and I'm looking to do working with Alex to do also the local productions. Do you want to talk about your work bringing people around the county? And
yeah. So basically, what we've been doing, and this is where it's kind of grown into that RTO9 study, is organically, because what we found would happen is, again, they would come for those anchor locations, but then we'd be selling them on a lot of additional stuff. And so we've actually, I think at this point, hosted 3 or 4 big scouts even onto Wolf Island. So we actually, most recently, the one that's going to be coming in this August is looking at shooting on Wolf Island for a period of time there. So the main thing we've been kind of working on through that is like getting everything properly represented into the provincial locations library. Basically, kind of, and this is kind of the RTO9 study piece of it, is being figuring out how we can kind of figure out that things are available, what's like who the points of contact are. A lot of the stuff they'll kind of get into the logistics of, like, most of the film production we find happens is they kind of want everything. They're willing to pay for everything, but they almost want everything yesterday. And so the big challenge we've run into with us has been Initially when I first joined with Kingston, it was about 2 weeks to turn a permit. And a lot of the time, the way things come up, and this is actually a good example because I've got a scout in today, but like Murdoch Mysteries, as of like, it was just a week ago that they were saying, oh, we're thinking about shooting in Kingston and surrounding areas. We'll get contacted that day. Usually by the next day, we're giving them an actual like Dropbox of different potential locations that could work. And then that scout, if they like what they see, they'll be back a day or two later. So he already came back last Friday. Then he was in again on Monday to catch the stuff that he couldn't shoot. And then today they're in with the director, and they'll make a decision probably by tomorrow on whether or not they're shooting. So it all happens very fast. And so I find like the biggest thing that we needed to do, and we did in Kingston, is before kind of opening it up for filming, we needed to make sure that we could kind of what was available and what we could turn fast. And then we started to find kind of location by location what the restrictions were for each. So it's kind of like getting it represented and in front of them through the locations library or through it, but also making sure we can turn it. And then kind of over time, as we go through a few of them, we kind of go through those aches and pains. And that's what I think is going to be the great thing with the Verona feature, is like working on that production together. We'll kind of have gotten a chance to go through the process and start to see what those requirements are, what the typical things are, and how to kind of speed it up. So I think it'll be definitely streamlining processes, making sure we know what those resources are in terms of location and processes and contacts for them. And then the other one will be making sure that we're able to kind of connect them to the talent within the area. And that's, and it all happens very fast. Like once the first one comes through, like in the case of Verona, they'll be, they're doing a article with the paper that'll be putting it through. We'll kind of paper it to the local, we'll notify the local residents that it's coming through. And then you get a lot of people that kind of come out of the woodwork. And then once you've gone it through it once, then you kind of keep going to that same group. And that'll be, I think, the same thing. So I think Verona will be a great test at 150,000. The next one that comes in will probably be about 500,000, which is this one in August, and it's getting closer to what Jay's wanting to do. So the first one, it's completely coming from Toronto to shoot here. The second one, they're Hamilton based. They do 8 pictures a year, so that's slate filmmaking, like Jay was talking about. So they're going to do one test shoot here, and then we're hoping to sell them on the idea of like come and do back-to-back productions. And then the hope is that it leads into what Jay's talking about, which is an actual production company that's just based here full time. And kind of setting it through. So it's kind of like an organic path.
Yeah. And so on my side, just to build on that, so my focus, as well as supporting Alex with some of the bigger stuff, is I'm really focused on, I'm one of those production companies that, I've set up shop here, incorporated and all of that stuff. But my thing is to first, basically get everybody, basically talk to as many people as possible, get this idea into as many people's hands. And to your point, yes, Big Sandy Bay. These are all things that we're going to start aggregating into a location library for the county. And it's something that, Alex already does a really great job at pushing. But for me, it's like, what is it going to take for us here locally to do those, 10 pictures back to back, so we can create that cadence and have that platform to train, so we can bring entry-level jobs in, what Alex is doing with his practicum program, what we're taking out of schools, where they might start as location assistants, but by the third picture, they're actually electricians. So we're building that kind of skill base. And that's how I learned. Like I literally, when I left Kingston to go work in film, my first job was literally dragging cable. And I learned every job on set until I became a producer, where now I'm the boss of my little factory kind of thing. But that's what I envision. And the more that we do that, and we have that local crew base, not only is it great for us and in terms of our own basically sector and capacity growth, but it's going to be great at getting those bigger productions that Alex spends the majority of his time kind of pulling in here, to really grow this industry. So, my hope is that in the next, part of it is what I'm trying to identify as the action plan and how much money it will take to kind of kick that project off. And, I'm identifying like something, again, just like any beta program, where Sudbury started off and the North started off with, a big chunk of money, like 25. I'm looking at, can we do it with like over 5 years? Like, could we figure out with some economic development like, I'm targeting something like under 4 million kind of thing to see if that we can create a platform. And that will come from a combination of grants, tax credits, all of that kind of stuff.
So Jay, with the action plan being completed, there'll be a list of ways that the county can support the growth of this industry when we have an action plan together. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. But in the meantime, to build that action plan, I look forward to anybody who wants to meet with me and also connect me, because I'm like the little red hen. We're all going to get together and we're going to figure out how to make this bread together. But I don't, to build this network and these, people that either, it's great to have people on side, but it's also great to bring people into the tent that might be offside to help tell them about what we're doing. Because a lot of people, when they think of film and TV, they think of, it's a lot of them don't think about it from the manufacturing perspective of this being like any other big sector in our economy in terms of how it churns capital. It's really clean business, really keeps young people here from going other places like Vancouver and Toronto. And I think it's something we can be proud of over the next decade as we see this grow.
Okay, Alan, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. So this is certainly not an area that I have any great expertise in or knowledge about at all, but I've been very impressed with the presentation, both the level of knowledge that's been displayed and the enthusiasm that's out there. So I'm certainly looking forward to seeing ways that this initiative can be supported and throughout the whole county. So thank you very much for bringing it to our attention.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I have one, but I'll let everybody go first. Wilma?
It sounds very exciting. I mean, I've been peripherally involved with theatrical things for a long time, but I am a little concerned. Have you any information, or are you looking into, Jay would especially know, what effect it has on a small community? We'll find out perhaps in Verona. It could be something we'd have to be very aware of, where a film industry can slide in and out of a city and not be even noticed or not draw much notice. When a film group comes in to film in a small rural community, it could be turning the whole place upside down for a while. And maybe that's good, maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm not saying it's bad. I just think it's an area that has to be really considered.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent question. I'll start, then Alex, if you want to jump in, because you can speak about the positive things of what you've done to date on your production. But me speaking personally as a producer who shot in places like North Bay, Lumsden, Saskatchewan, Moose Jaw, these smaller rural centers that we talk about. So when we're setting up a production, generally, about 60% of what we shoot is generally indoors, especially when we're on location. For the most part, yes, we do have exterior stuff that sometimes we need to be on the street, which we always permit. We always have police officers, paid duty officers there for traffic control and all of that stuff. On a film set, we have a whole locations department that deals with waste, garbage, all of that stuff. Again, our whole thing is, a town is an asset. And the last thing we want to do is burn an asset down, like not literally. But the idea that we're going to upset any local residents, we're going to make this, that they're not going to want any productions like this in the future. These are all things that we're very conscious of. And, I, and especially Alex, is extremely sensitive about. And that's why, when you look at an industry like the film industry, and let's just talk about 2020 in terms of how careful we are. Because we're dealing in a lot of our insurance and stuff, we're dealing with obviously celebrities and how our financing comes together. There was a time in 2020 for about 6 months when in Ontario, we didn't film until we did something called Section 21, which was all the regulations we needed to film safely during COVID. And just speaking with COVID protocols, within, when you look at an industry like ours, the amount of COVID tests that were done between Q4 2020 and Q2 2021 was about 133,000 rapid tests on film sets. Our positivity rate was 0.06% compared to 5.3% in other workplaces. So we're extremely sensitive to this kind of stuff. Alex, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, definitely, because I think that's Wilma, that's a great concern, because that's the same concern we have on our side. And we've been able to navigate it really, fortunately, really well within Kingston, because one of the biggest challenges that you get is like a production that comes in, could burn out a community and then leave. So what we've actually been very careful of is most of the stuff that we've been doing, it's at a union level. So it's like the larger productions that are coming in, it's highly unionized, which means that the person who's ultimately responsible for locations for that production is a union member. And so they go from production to production to production on that locations role. So actually, in the case of this Amazon production we had last week, the locations contact for it was on Murdoch Mysteries with us, dealing with him about a year and a half before. Same thing, Lock and Key came in once, then they're looking at coming back. Titans came in once, they're coming back. So when you're dealing with locations managers that are going from production to production in that role, they're all very much vested in maintaining that relationship, leaving the production or leaving the location in the same or better condition than when they came. So to give an idea, this Paramount show that's coming in, they're right now, they just greenlit $30,000 worth of fence repairs and gate creation at the Kingston Penitentiary. They're taking an electronic gate that hasn't worked in years. They're spending $5,000 to get it fully repaired. We had similar type things with Titans, where they took 80 broken windows, fully replaced them, cleared out 5 years worth of pigeon poop. So they'll really invest into it. Then where we get more careful on is the non-union stuff. And so in our role, we have a representative, and this is the film office's role is kind of bridging both. So we make sure that we are there, or we're supplying someone who's in that role. So in the case of, and it speaks actually to what Jay was talking about with job creation. So in the case of Verona, for example, the location manager, so there's two that we've bridged to. One is Alana, who worked with the film office. She was a Queen student, graduated working with the film office, and then she ended up becoming their scout, and she now works in the industry. She's been hired by Titans. So it's kind of been that process of like training someone up. And then the other one, who's the active location manager, is Lauren, and she was another one who kind of worked as a locations PA on 3 of the big productions that came in, Murdoch and Titans. And then now what we've done is we've invested training in her to become an actual location manager for Verona. And we're trying to build more of that so that there is that local point. Because we want to make sure with those productions that come in, and this is why I love, like, what Jay's trying to do of actually being based in the areas, because when you get a production company that's based in the area, they have that vested interest. But when it's a production that comes in, if it's not unionized, those are the ones that spook me more. So what we end up going through with them is we want like a whole locations plan. We actually step in and stuff like that the city or that the individual locations wouldn't know, but we're making sure that they've got those insurance certificates. So in the case of Hinchinbrook, when it came in, we made sure that CBC, the production company that was doing it for CBC, named the location and named the region on an insurance certificate that covers it. We also will review their insurance to make sure that it covers. Sometimes international productions, their insurance doesn't extend to here. And then we're usually part of their initial scouts to make sure that we go through it. We get a sense of what it is, and then we kind of outline what those rules are. And then we also make sure that with that location, we kind of talk with them to make sure that they're getting a proper rate and they're protected through. And that's kind of the role of the film office, is bridging it.
I think may I speak just for a moment?
Yeah.
I think that's maybe more detail than we need at this point.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm 100% behind making some use of those buildings at Rockwood and adjacent and at Kingston Pen. It'd be wonderful to make use of them, full use like that. But I guess what I'm concerned about, and I've heard what you said about all your cautions, would be, how would it be, Jay, if you pictured a film crew taking over the Wolf Islander and Marysville for 2-3 weeks?
Sure, that's a great question. So generally when, sorry, I didn't, did I go ahead?
Well, just not a lot of details, just a quick sketch.
Sure. Yeah, so for the productions I'm looking at from a hyper-local level, where again, it's, so if we were shooting in Marysville, again, from day to day, you're generally shooting about what we call 3 pages a day. So, we are generally location dependent. So we don't take over a whole town. We generally are very isolated. Like, we're going to shoot this house today, we're going to shoot that barn tomorrow, we're going to do this, and there's going to be those location moves. But generally, you know, our thing right now is to basically is low impact as much as possible. Like, we go and paper a town before the day. We say, this is where we're going to be shooting this day. If you guys have any concerns, you just call this number. You know, like I said, we generally have security and all that stuff to make sure that, you know, we're not impacting the day-to-day life of people in it. And most of this stuff, like I said, is like, you might see a house and you might see lights pointing in a house, but most of that stuff is generally isolated in an interior. The days that we do need like something like a street, it's generally for a very short amount of time that we do have. That's when we start to hire police officers to help, you know, with traffic. If we have to stop the traffic for like a minute just to get a set, it's generally no more than like a minute or a minute and a half of inconvenience until we set up our next shot. So, you know, what I'm trying to portray, or trying to convey, I should say, is the fact that we are really low impact and we are extremely sensitive with not pissing off the locals, because once we do that, we've lost the town. So what I want to say is everything that we do is very tactical. It's very planned, because, you know, again, we're burning money every day because we've got all these workers working that we need to be very, you know, again, very scheduled, very ordered. So there's no chaos to it. It's actually, like I said, lots of information that's given out ahead of time, where the community has a chance to feed back.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't. There, I got the hand lowered. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Anybody else? Lisa, do you have any questions? No, you're fine. I'm from the north part of the of the county, as everybody knows, and our landscape is much different than in Kingston, Verona area. So I'm just wondering if you are looking at working also with RTO 11, which is where we're located, and because the diversity in Frontenac County, like, we're very more, I guess you'd call it remote. So we have like 1,900 full-time residents in probably the biggest area in the county. So we're like 70% crown land. So it's a very different, and even the weather. I mean, you might not have any snow in Kingston and we might have 3 feet. So are you looking at that kind of diversity, or is this just geared to more of the southern part of the county?
I'll let Alex start with that one.
Yeah, I know for us right now, what we're looking at with this initial one with the RTO9 is just kind of setting it through. But it's kind of like, you know, before we had the RTO9 money, we were still just supporting broader regions anyways, because I think it's good for anyone. So I totally would be a resource. Like, if there's contacts up to there, happy to. And even if it's not part of the RTO9 presentation, if there's someone that you'd suggest from that group to join in, I could send you the info for the talk that we have next Thursday, and glad to include you in. And then we can also, while we've got our summer work students doing photography, we could totally get a photographer up there to shoot some of those locations as well, to get them into the library. The thing I love about this so far is that all my interactions is in within the broader film offices, is that everyone's just really supportive. Ultimately, it's like, if they need a prison, they're going to shoot at Kingston Pen, but if they need country, they're going to be sending somewhere else. Like, we've already completely outside of our region, but we've already sent 3 productions to Bon Echo Provincial Park, which is just
that's just, so we border on Bon Echo. Part of Bon Echo is in North Frontenac, so we go that far north. We go up to Calabogie almost. So we have a like I say, a huge northern region that is, you know, might be interested in, and it gives you a whole different kind of setting. It would be more outdoors than indoors because there isn't a lot here. But you know, it would give you diversity for different shoots and that. And so that's all I'm just wondering about, because when we talk about the county, we have to talk about the whole county. So
yeah, you know, on our side again, they fully support. We actually shot Bon Echo Provincial Park, even though outside our region, for the Provincial Locations Library. We listed, I think it was Clark, if I remember right, as the main contact there, but we listed ourselves as a secondary. And I think in those cases, there's a few where he's busy or it's off season, and they'll contact Clark production. If they can't get a hold of him, they'll reach out to us. And so we actually drove the Apple Show C back to them, where they contacted us. We helped facilitate it, and we'll even go out there and help them on a scout. I mean, until the volume gets too high, we've been able to totally just support broader. And then what we're hoping to do is maybe at the end of the RTO9 study, see if we can actually formally support more of the regions, and if there might be funds towards even creating a regional representative that's for all the surrounding regions that could kind of fall into it. And the big thing is then we can streamline it so everyone's getting consistent kind of like permitting processes, consistent, we can kind of all have it in one big umbrella. But yeah, that's the whole goal, is the more we can kind of streamline a whole surrounding region, the better.
Yeah, because I'm on the North Frontenac Economic Development Task Force too. And I'm with former CFTC Business Services now, and that so I have a lot of interest in economic development in this area.
Excellent.
So anyways, that was my only questions, was looking at different ways and letting you know there is different areas.
Yeah, and part of me, and no, it's terrific. And again, the more diversity that we can capture, the better, to kind of show off the area, because your area might be great for especially someone looking for like you say, a more rural or period or rustic or Western feel, dare I say. So, and again, the great thing about, as with I'm sure we've all watched lots of feature films, and there's something for everybody, and there's some background, or there's something that's and the more that we understand what's unique, and also identifying those other things like buildings that aren't being used, that could be used as temporary studios to build a small set in, other things that are maybe municipally controlled buildings that are underutilized that we can rent to productions. These are all things that, as part of this, that we're going to try and take as part of the resources available at a hyper local level, that we're going to try and take note of. So I'd love, I'm sure we'll get everyone's contact information. But if you have somebody, I'm happy to come up there and kind of meet some stakeholders up there and just kind of talk about what's available. And just kind of answer the hard questions.
That would be great. And I can be a contact, and I can give you the employee that does our community development and things like that. I can put them in touch with them too.
Great.
And I'm gonna have
we had a bunch of fishing films done up here a few years ago for TV and that. But, yeah, so.
Now I'm gonna have to excuse myself because I've actually got this Murdoch Scout, but I posted my contact info in the website, or our website, into the chat. And anybody we can help with, please let us know. And I think to make it clear, so I think the RTO9 study is going to be more about bringing production in and helping streamlining the permits and processes for it there. And I think the hyperlocal study that Jay's doing is going to be very much a framework for production within those regions and building up that infrastructure for it. And so both of us were always hand in hand on these different things. So you could reach out on with either of us on any of it. Okay, well, thanks so much. Sorry, I have to.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sorry to babble. I get excited and I can talk too much.
That's all right.
All right, take care, guys. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm here to answer any questions. I don't have any pressing. If anybody has anything else they want to dive into.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to speak to while we're on this? No, I guess
Thanks.
you've answered all our questions so far, and I want to thank you and Alex both for being here and doing this presentation for us. It's been very informative, and look forward to better things coming with the film industry.
Oh,
thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your time. It's been terrific. And thanks for Richard and Allison for organizing this.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jay, and we'll see you around town.
Absolutely. I'm just and I'm sure once all this lifts, we'll see you down at Wolfie's or something.
Yeah.
Take care, Jay.
Okay, take care. Thank you again.
Okay, so that was interesting. Now, reports to the Community Development Advisory. We got a motion that be it resolved that the Community Development Advisory Committee endorses the changes to the COVID response plan to County Council. So, Richard, are you speaking to this, or Allison?
I'll speak to this. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you.
So I started this report as just an update on our activities, and what I realized was a lot of the assumptions that we had placed into our response plan in May of 2020 were no longer valid when it came to May of 2021. In fact, the original timeline sort of indicated that we'd be entering into a recovery phase, not in the middle of a lockdown in May of 2020, not even in January, we'd be in a recovery phase was the plan. And so that was our first my first realization. So I had to, if you take a look at the report, I had to make some revised assumptions in terms of the timeline. Our activities and the themes of our activities haven't really changed. And in the report, I speak to some of the information that we got from the business survey that we conducted in January. Now, obviously, since we've conducted that survey, we've had additional vaccine rollout, we've had additional shutdowns. So the state of mind that businesses were in January may be different than where they're at right now. But ultimately, businesses were indicating that that while some have seen a revenue drop of 25% or more, most didn't expect to have to close as a result of COVID-19. So that either tells us that the support programs that have been in place are working, or that the businesses have found ways to adapt to find new clients or sell their products in new ways, so that they're able to move forward. So they may not be profitable at the moment, but they are they're able to stay afloat, I guess, and so the report sort of outlined that we would continue with the initiatives that we had started last year, and continue to plan towards recovery, because the immediate response to COVID-19 seems to be in hand or secure in some ways for many businesses, and not every business, that's for sure, but for many. And so we are working on the destination plan, continuing to accentuate our tourism website and our Visit Frontenac social media. Earlier on the call, we had Kylie here, who is our economic development team member for the summer, our summer student who does digital marketing. She'll be focused on doing this work on the Visit Frontenac social media and tourism website. And this is all to prepare ourselves for that point at some point in the next few months, where where we'll be welcoming others into our communities again, and who we're welcoming and how we're welcoming them, I think, is something that we're looking for a little leadership from the province and the federal government on. But we want to continue to support our tourism businesses that were hit pretty hard. And then in addition to that, we're looking at proceeding with the recommendations from the Economic Development Review that help us establish ourselves as more of an investment attraction office, and have the economic development team working on a more regional level and less on local projects, but supporting our local partners when they have local projects to move forward on. And so we sort of I sort of tried to capture as much of that in the report as possible, and adjusted the dashboard to indicate some newer timelines that dependent on whether new variants emerge in terms of COVID-19 and their efficacy against the vaccines or other types of risks that might be out there, we're hoping to see a bit more recovery going forward with. Any questions on the report?
Questions? Dennis?
I move we accept the report. Thank you, Richard, for the explanation.
There's a
And
recommendation,
hopefully-
Betty, if you want to read that for Deputy Warden again.
No. Gotta go back up here.
It says, be it resolved that the Community Development Advisory Committee endorse the changes to the COVID-19 response plan to County Council.
I guess that's
Okay.
the same as accepting the report. Sorry, Deputy Warden.
Yeah,
I thought
that's
there was
what the
more detail
resolution
there.
is.
Yeah, I
No,
had
that's
read the motion before we had the discussion, so.
Okay, great.
Anyways, nope, okay, then, moved by Dennis, seconder. Wilma,
And
anyone opposed? Seeing none, we shall move on. Whoops. Change my glasses so I can read better anyway. So now we're going on to open farms. So be it resolved that the Community Development Advisory Committee endorses the direction and actions related to the open farms outlined in the 2021-43 report. And further, that County Council authorizes the warden and clerk to complete relevant agreements associated with grant applications outlined in report 2021-43. I assume, Allison, you're speaking with this, or Richard?
Yep, I'll speak to this one. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
I'm just going to hit the high points. Obviously, you've had a chance to read the report. So the first thing I want to highlight is the partners that we've established for this year. So we've got partnerships with South Frontenac Township and with Tourism Kingston, which is very exciting. And then you'll see also in the report a list of all the organizations that I've had conversations with. Everybody's quite supportive of the event moving forward as we've outlined it here in this report. So that's wonderful. One of the conversations I've had is with KFLNA Public Health and one of their, I think she's a COVID enforcement officer, sounds very official. And she essentially said, yes, it's reasonable to be planning for an in-person event of this nature, so outdoors of this scope for September. She gave us lots of direction on how to do that safely. So there will obviously be lots of requirements for anybody who wants to participate this year to put things in place to make sure we meet those protocols. And her other direction was plan for the best and prepare for the worst. So essentially, we'll plan we'll plan to have all of the health and safety stuff in place. And then if we have to, we'll cancel our in-person events or we'll scale them back. And then if that happens, we can scale up the virtual stuff. So you'll see in the report there, the outline of virtual components and in-person components. Now, unfortunately, I do have an update on the grant applications. In the report, we've outlined that we applied for 2 grants and we've heard on Wednesday afternoon, yesterday, that we were unsuccessful in the Healthy Communities Initiative grant. That proposal was really about sort of translating the momentum of open farms into a year-round local food program. So not getting that grant doesn't impact the 2021 event. It just means that we won't be tackling that bigger proposal around a year-round program at this point. The Reconnect Festival grant, I'm feeling pretty positive. I do think we will get that one. Our application feels very in line with the intent of that program. And we're expecting the announcement in early summer, which I don't know what that means. So just wait and see for now. If we don't get the Reconnect grant, we will have to change our plans a little bit. We'll have to scale some things back. Part of the Reconnect grant is a bit of money to hire a contract event coordinator. So essentially somebody to help me with, chasing people for paperwork and all those kinds of things. And if I don't have that second set of hands, even for a few weeks, we're going to just have to put some limits around, how many people we can have participating and that sort of thing. So plans are contingent on that grant, but an event will go forward even if we don't get a Reconnect grant. So stay tuned for more details on that. And I think those are the highlights. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, the recommendation is there.
Any questions? No? Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder for the motion that I read? Alan and Lisa? And is anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay. Should have printed this agenda out first. Okay, so now we're at communications. So has everybody read the communications? And is there any discussion on any part of any of the communications at this moment? Okay, and there's nothing we have to do on the business journal that Ron Higgins sent?
No, if you
all
take a
done.
look through that business journal, you'll see that Frontenac County is profiled. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to actually read. I think it's, I don't know, page 14 or so. So certainly take a look.
Okay. Okay, so now other business. So Wilma, do you want to start the discussion? And Richard?
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of clarity on the procedure here. And so Wilma can make a statement that does not require action. But if we want to have a fulsome discussion about the committee, it's something that we should make sure is included on a public agenda for the next meeting. So Wilma, let us know what you'd like to do.
Well, I'm concerned that we've lost 2 members. I think we need more members if we're to continue. And I would like to know what our role is, because I didn't feel that the wishes of the committee were respected in regard to that issue of ATVs on the trail through Verona. I know perhaps it's not a huge issue, but I wasn't very comfortable with the way that played out. I don't want to reopen that issue, but I think we need to know just what the role of the committee is, and we probably need more members. And so I think it's worth a fuller discussion.
Okay, so just as information, so we have posted advertisements for new committee members. So we are recruiting currently, and I believe that closes shortly after our next scheduled meeting. And what we can do is we can either bring up when we have new committee members. So it could be at the first meeting with the next set of community members. We could go through the mandate and the purpose, which might make more sense than if we do it now, or we could do it at the next meeting if you'd like.
So can you send out a copy of the mandate and everything, Richard, to everybody so they have a better
Sure.
Understanding of what our mandate and everything is?
Sure.
Would that help, Wilma?
Yeah. And I'd like to know what the other remaining 3 committee members think about this proposal I made.
Okay, so Dennis has got his hand up, and as a member of this committee and county council, I would like to ask what his opinion is from a county council stand as well as a member stand. Dennis?
Yes, I wasn't aware that we posted for committee members. Maybe I missed it, but could we get a copy of that for the committee, and
sure.
Maybe we can promote locally?
Certainly.
I know it's been promoted in our area that Corey sent out an information pack about the wanting CDAC members, so I know it's been sent out, so. Okay, so Dennis, do you have any, or Alan, do you want to do it as a member of county council and as a member of the committee? Make a comment on what you see?
Well, cautiously, I guess. I mean, it's, you know, I think
This
certainly.
is just a very general discussion. It's not a debate thing.
No, I appreciate that. I think I think the committee certainly can have some value in terms of reflecting some of the community's views back to county council. And so in that sense, I think it's certainly worthwhile. It's an opportunity for staff to, you want to do a test drive on some of the proposals they would like to bring forward to county council. And it's a reflection I shared with Deputy Warden and myself in terms of the views maybe the county council might have as well. So it's, I think the committee in itself can be quite workable along the way. I have another matter which I'd like to raise, but once this is finished, please.
Okay, Richard?
So Betty, what I'd just like to know is when we should bring up this discussion at the next possible meeting of CDEC. So the next scheduled one is June 10th, I believe. Or should we plan for it to be at the next meeting where we have new committee members appointed by council?
Okay, so I'm wondering if we should do it before we have the new committee members, so everybody's on the same page. I don't want to have new committee members in and us having a discussion whether the committee is worth having. I don't think that's going to be beneficial to new people coming into the discussion. I don't know about other people's feelings, but that's my feeling is when you're bringing in new members, I want them to know that their role is valid. Wilma?
I would agree with Betty.
Okay, so I think we should set up a interim meeting.
Dennis?
We won't have new committee members at the next scheduled meeting, so we'll bring the mandate for review at the next scheduled meeting, which is June 10th, I believe.
Okay.
Am I getting that right?
Very good, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, that's the next scheduled meeting, Richard.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, and if meanwhile you can send that information out to everybody so they do understand what our role is as a committee, that would probably help everyone.
I think Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. Richard mentioned June 10th. I didn't think it was that soon. That's less than a month away. We usually don't have.
That's because we canceled the March meeting, or the April meeting, so we had it in May. So our next scheduled meeting is June 10th.
Yeah, technically this is the April meeting.
Okay, that's why.
That's why, because we didn't have things in April, but we did in May. So we changed that schedule, but the next scheduled meeting is June 10th. Okay, anything else on that?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so everyone's in agreement with that decision then? That it will be discussed at the June 10th meeting. Okay, now Alan, you had something to bring up that wasn't on the agenda and you want to bring up under other business?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's an item that's sort of been floating around a bit. It's just the review of the KMP trail will be coming back before County Council and our municipal councils. For me, I think certainly having some of the best information around that survey that we conducted would be useful. I'm just wondering if we could parse out from the survey, if we take out the respondents that identified ATV or motorized vehicles use as their primary connection with the trail, that would provide a much clearer indication of the sort of general community consensus, I think, of the conflicts that they might see. And I don't know how and where that might happen or not. I'm assuming it's something that can be done, but I think it would be helpful in the long run.
And I think, Wilma, as far as the KMP trail, that's going back to County Council, I believe, in a year to be relooked at again, if I got the correct information.
I think so. I just wasn't happy with the way that whole thing played out, the way that, yeah, I didn't feel our wishes were carried forward, but I don't want to open that up right now.
No, I understand that, but it will,
But I like that.
we will be
I like
having a
Alan's
discussion.
suggestion. I like Alan's suggestion that it might be a good way to look at the review and get a bit more information perhaps.
And how big is this whole survey to send out, Richard?
I'll be bringing a report with the survey results.
At the June 10th meeting, or no?
Probably not June 10th, but if not that one, the meeting scheduled for August.
August, okay. Okay, Dennis, one question?
Yeah, I also agree with Alan because obviously the ATV clubs are going to support it. So it'd be nice to know what
Well, yes.
the community people felt about the use of the trail. Good suggestion, Alan.
If you review the package that I brought to the committee back in the fall, we did show the data for that question in multiple ways, including people who don't primarily use ATVs. So there were a number of different ways to look at the data for that question in one of the packages that when we reviewed the data, including that. So I can send you the link to that when I send you this other information, because it's already. But it might have been taken down because it was a PDF, but it already exists. So
okay, so yeah, because when I looked at it, it was kind of a 50-50 draw. If you looked at who wanted and who didn't want, if you added the haven't decided and against and the fours, it was pretty well a 50-50 split on the survey. So I think we need to review that data again and make sure that we all understand it.
Just to be clear, that would be for review, but the decision has been made by County Council, and so this committee doesn't dive back into those decisions. So okay,
no,
all right.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay, our next meeting we have said is June 10th at 10 a.m. Hopefully someday soon we'll see each other again in person. Would be so nice. But meanwhile,
I just booked my first vaccine shot for June 3rd. So I'm old enough. I'm old enough now, apparently. So.
So is my granddaughter. So you better be. She's just 18. So anyways, but yeah, I'm glad you're getting your shots, and hopefully everybody's getting their shots, and we can soon move forward with our lives.
Yeah.
Our new life without COVID, hopefully. Anyways.
Oh, sorry, Dennis has a question, I think.
Yes, Dennis.
Yeah, stay safe, everybody, and I move we adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Are you going to formally call the vote on adjournment?
Adjourned. Yep.
Man.
Would